Okay, what am I going to say? Beautiful Vega people. Last of the lesson planning tutorials that I'm going to share with you. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I have filled in my lesson plan. So we've got these columns, the first being time, how long you expect that segment of the lesson to go for, what the teacher does. Now, I haven't considered OH and S issues in mine. I've thought a little bit about management and organisation and most importantly, the teaching points. Remember, what I'm showing you is probably roughly worth a low pass. You will put a lot more thought and effort into it. This is me just knocking up something as an example for you. Over here, what the students will do, this will require thought. Students aren't just passively sitting there taking it in. You will have to have active. Finally, the resources, which I haven't filled in. I'm just going to tell you the sort of things that you'll put in there. So, my lesson begins with the WALT for the lesson. We are learning to, that's what WALT stands for, become active listeners. I'm going to note key new vocabulary for my students, active listeners. So the students will repeat active listeners to ensure it becomes part of their vocabulary. Then I'm going to invite a student to the front to tell me about their weekend. And I'm going to deliberately select a student that's already confident, and I'm going to ask the other students to watch and notice how I listen. And I'll challenge them to decide if I'm a good or a bad listener. So the chosen student describes their weekend. The students in the class are observing me, and I would expect some laughter and calling out bad listener as I'm going to fidget, wriggle, whisper to others, look around. So then for those two activities, I really don't need any resources, maybe just the smartboard. Okay, then I'm going to initiate a class discussion by posing the question, was Mrs. Stroud a good listener? Why or why not? And then I'm going to select students from the Lotto tab. So over here in the resources, I'd need to write down Lotto tab, and I'd need to have a brief description of it, which is just basically a tab with every child's name written on a ticket. And I'm going to choose from the Lotto tab, and I might even put there because I want to select random students to give their response and reasons. And then I'll note down the reasons students give as they say them. Okay, so again, I'll need my smartboard over in my resources. So what are the students doing? The students contribute to discussion as their name is drawn from the Lotto tab. They're watching as responses are written up, and there will be some on-task talking or spontaneous contributions, and I will welcome them at that time. Okay. You'll need to do some formatting with this document. I'll just say that now. Anyway, then moving on to the body of the lesson, which I expect will take about 10 minutes. So I'm going to ask the students then to consider why active listening is important. So I'm going to allow individual think time of 30 seconds. Then I'm going to ask the students to partner up and share their ideas with a partner. And then finally, I'm going to call the group together to share their ideas. So what are the students doing? They're engaging in the think, pair, share process, which they're already familiar with. Okay, I'm presuming they're already familiar with it. I'm saying it because remember, this is an imaginary class and you can put the context around it. Then I'm going to restate the words active listener and use my poster prompts, which I'd identify here as a resource. And I'll use my poster prompts to explain to the students how their whole body is involved in active listening. So even though I don't have those posters, I might describe them briefly over here, so there's a picture of a child with their legs crossed and a picture of a child with their fingers on their lips and a picture of a child making eye contact. So as I'm pulling out each poster, what are the students doing? They're demonstrating each listening skill, and we'd really exaggerate that. Show me good eye contact, show me how still you can keep your body, and so on. So next I'm going to partner the students up, and this is their independent practice. They're going to partner up and they're going to practice active listening by telling their reading buddy about their weekend. Again, their reading buddy is something I'll note over here in my resources, because my reading buddies are mixed ability pairs. I actually put my more able students with my least able students. So I'd note that over there because it's a management and organisation issue. So as the students complete the task, the teacher would be moving around the room. Don't forget that you have a role to play while students complete a task. So you're moving around the room, and this is a chance for me to make observations on my checklist, and I can redirect students who need to get back on task, and I can encourage and individually support students who require help. Okay, and as more able partnerships finish, I can suggest new topics. Okay, guys, now talk about your pets. Now talk about foods you like. So the students are going to partner up. They're going to move to their own area. They're going to talk to one another, practicing the skill of active listening. Okay. Finally, we've got the closure and the student self-reflection. So I'll bring the class back together and present them with a why chart. I'll ask them to think about the sharing activity they just experienced, and when they're ready, invite them to share their responses to the why chart. So I might draw over here an example of a standard why chart, which is a looks like, sounds like, feels like chart, pretty usual to be found in primary school classrooms. And they'll finish these sentences. Active listening feels like, active listening looks like, active listening sounds like. And as each child contributes their idea, I'm going to restate what they say before I write it on, and I want to validate their contribution with some feedback. So I might say, and I noticed you doing that when you were talking with Donald. Or I might say, yeah, it feels like that for me too. Or, yes, I certainly saw a lot of that when I was looking around. So what are the students doing? They're reflecting on the experience they've just had. They're spontaneously contributing to the chart discussion, and they're listening to their peers. Now, to wrap up, my very final activity that I'm going to have is, my very final activity that I'm going to have, I want to merge those cells there, and it's not wanting to. I want to put that because this is part of my closure. And I've highlighted this because this would be what I would have demonstrated if I had to demonstrate something in the tutorial, is to teach the students the active listening song. And I could add that as Appendix B. I haven't, but I could do it if I was really doing this assignment. And I do teach it to the students by singing it with a demonstration of the actions, and invite the students to join with me as I sing the song. Now at this point I've got to go back up here and check that I'm doing all the things that I said I wanted to do, because I know there was a guided question that here. See, I've covered why should we be active listeners. We've done a lot of talk about that. But at the end, I'd like to ask this question again. What do active listeners do? So maybe here at the end, this song, the reason I've chosen that as my means of communication, because it's rhyming and it's got actions with it. So I think it's an effective form of communication, because then I'm going to challenge the students to tell me what active listeners do. Okay, and so over here, students participate in the song using voices and the actions. Okay, and then during the final challenge, students recall the behaviours of active listeners And then I'm going to say teacher can use actions of the song as a non-verbal prompt. You know, so for that child that hasn't caught on yet, I can put my finger over my lips to make them say, oh, voice off or mouth closed, or I can really stare at them with my eyes and say, eyes are, and then they will be able to say, oh, yeah, that's right, eyes are watching, because they've made that connection with the song. Okay, so over here, my resource would be the song. The lyrics of the song. I could maybe even make a little voice recording of the clip of the song and attach that as an appendix if I really wanted to go over and above. So then I've got assessment of student learning. So this is where we go back up here and we consider what our assessment task was. How will I know students have met the learning intent? So, oh, and look here, I was going to say thumbs up, thumbs down strategy at the end of each lesson. So I can add that onto here. I can ask the class how they feel they have understood the WALT, and then get them to do the thumbs up, thumbs down. Strategy. I could note that and describe that a little bit over here in my resources. Okay, so then over here, assessment of student learning, I can have how many students gave a thumbs up, were students able to recall the behaviours of an active listener, and then reflecting on the checklist. What questions would you ask? Could most students demonstrate active listening skills? Okay, so always going back up to your outcomes and the things that you put at the top, because it all needs to link in. Now, over here in the evaluation, this is where you're evaluating yourself as a teacher, okay, and how well that lesson went. So it ties in with your assessment, but it's not about the students learning, it's about how well you delivered that lesson. So my big focus was the song. So my evaluation, was the song effective in helping students recall active listening behaviours? Another evaluation question I might say is did I clearly express the key ideas of active listening through my role play? Was the lesson well paced? Okay, so did I spend too long or too short on a particular activity? Were the activities age appropriate? So this is going to be a series of questions or tasks that you're going to do on completion of the lesson. Okay, my evaluation might also reflection time on assessment checklist might be included, and some key questions associated with that as well. Okay, so once you've completed all of that, then it's a matter of formatting it, adding in those resources, adding in any appendices that you wanted, you know, and just smartening up the lesson plan. What I've demonstrated to you is probably around about a good solid pass. Okay, so you will look at ways of showing an outstanding understanding of a lesson plan. I hope that makes sense. I'll save what I've got here. I'll put it on the discussion forum, and you can thank me later. See you later, beautiful people.